In this video, I play as the Brawler class. Brawlers use fists and knuckles to beat up their enemies. Landing hits will stack up their combo count to unleash powerful attacks. Will I be able to beat down Moonlord? Stay tuned to find out. Alright, so to start things off, I gathered some wood and went underground to collect some cobwebs. These cobwebs will be used later on to make my first weapon. While I was underground, I did some mining for some lead to make the sawmill and the loom. At the loom, I turned my cobwebs into some silk. And with the silk, I made my first weapon, the boxing gloves. Now I can start punching some enemies. But I noticed right away that whenever I threw a punch at something, I would get knocked back as well. You'll see later on in this video how this function will get really crazy. I also noticed that every hit increases my combo count, which is the number in blue text. And for the boxing gloves, once I hit a certain number, I have a chance to confuse the enemy. I went back down and found myself flurry boots and almost mined all the way down to hell, but I fell and died. When I respawned, I made the gold knuckle duster with some gold bars, which has a 7 damage increase than the boxing gloves. Also, by using 5 combo count, I am able to do an empowered strike. I found a meteorite, so I started blowing it up with some bombs, but I forgot that I had the vein miner mod, which would have been so much faster. Once I mined it all, I made my next weapon, the Fist of Fury, and I got the godly modifier on it. This weapon allows me to dash through enemies, and by doing so, it increases my melee damage by 15%, as well as my knockback. I also made the Comet Fu, but I never really used it, since the Fist of Fury was so much better. I made the meteorite armor as well, even though the set effect wasn't gonna do anything for me, but the increased defense does help. So the first boss I fought was the Brain of Cthulhu. I would have fought the Eye of Cthulhu first, but I never really got the chance to farm up enough lenses to do so. So for this boss fight, I had to get really close to it, obviously, and I kept getting knocked around, which was very annoying. So I ended up dying. But the good news about this boss is that I don't really have to actually beat it. All I have to do is get enough tissue sample to make the Deathbringer pickaxe, which I did. Now with this pickaxe, I went all the way down to hell and mined some hellstone to create the Phoenix Mark and the Molten Armor set. At night, I got a message saying you feel an evil presence watching you, which meant that the Eye of Cthulhu was about to spawn. So I built a simple 1-layer platform to fight it. And things got a bit crazy. The knockback I mentioned earlier in this video, here's a perfect example. I got knocked back all the way up into the sky, so when I fell down, I took 64 damage. After killing the Eye of Cthulhu, I got a rush charm that reduces my dash cooldown. Then I went back down into the Crimson to finish off the Brain of Cthulhu. Next up is Skeletron, and by using my right click, which is the dash, I was able to dodge all of its attacks while attacking. So I was able to beat this boss pretty easily. Down in the dungeons, I was able to find the Goblin Tinkerer, so I bought the Rocket Boots and the Tinkerer's Workshop from him. There was one more weapon to make before I go into hard mode, and that is the Demon Hand, which is made from 4 other weapons just like the Knight's Edge, the Hellstone, Demonite/Crimtane, Dungeon, and Jungle weapon. I had everything except the Jungle one, so I farmed some materials to make it, and once I collected everything, I went to a Crimson Altar to craft it. This weapon has the ability to steal life from enemies by consuming combo. Down in hell, I started building the bridge to fight the Wall of Flesh. But before I fought it, I maxed out my HP to 400. I also crafted the Prize Fighter helmet that increases my damage up to 1000% the slower I fight bosses. As well as the Journeyman Sash that restores life at the end of a combo up to 25% of my maximum health, which is extremely broken. So after preparing, getting my weapon, some better accessories, and maxing out my health, it was now time to fight the Wall of Flesh. Here you can see I just went right into it. It didn't really matter how much damage I took, because I would just heal it all right away. So with the Journeyman Sash, it would heal me 100 health at the end of every combo, and with my weapon, after reaching a certain combo count, when I right click, that would also heal me. So I'm pretty much unkillable now. After killing the wall of flesh, I got a new item called the Frenzy Heart, which gives me a new melee healing ability. All damage that I take can now be recovered with melee attacks. Then I broke some Crimson Altars to summon the hard mode ores. I mined some Cobalt, then Mithril, and then finally Titanium. I made the Titanium Fist that increases my melee damage by 30%, and it also grants Shadow Clones, so I'll be able to deal multiple hits rather than just one. And now it's time to take on the mechanical bosses, starting with Skeletron Prime. These bosses weren't really hard at all, especially since I could just heal it all back. When I opened up the treasure bag, I got a developer's armor set that includes wings, so now I don't have to worry about fall damage anymore. And with the hollowed bars, I made the hollowed Vambrace. This weapon lets me parry attacks, and by doing so, it grants my next attack an increased damage of 400%. But I'm gonna have to time this right as I'm about to get hit. I then went on to finish the last two remaining mechanical bosses, the Destroyer and the Twins. Now that I have all three mechanical parts, I was able to make the Scrap Exo Suit. This accessory reduces my cooldown for dashes, it lets me restore life by consuming combo, as well as stealing life by parrying, and it increases my life regen while I'm moving. Afterwards, I made the pickaxe axe and went down to the jungle to mine some chlorophyte ore. Then with the souls of all three mechanical bosses, I made the Shaolin Robe set. The set bonus temporarily reduces damage taken while not attacking. I went back to the jungle and summoned Plantera. With the hollowed Vambrace, I parried most of Plantera's attacks and was able to do over 1000 damage per hit, so the fight ended pretty fast. I was able to get a new weapon called the Barbed Knuckles. Comboing with this weapon creates a ball of thorn that orbits around me, and right-clicking creates a temporary shield that also deals damage. I went to the temple and saw that the shrine was on top of some spikes, which meant that if I broke the spike underneath the shrine, it would also break the shrine as well. I summoned the golem on top of the surface since there's a lot more room to work with, and I kept attacking non-stop. I mean, just look at how insane the healing is. After I killed the golem, I went straight to the dungeon to take on the lunatic cultist. And of course, this boss was also really easy. Now it's time to take on the pillars. I started with the vortex pillar, and not even a whole horde of alien queens could stop me. Next up, I destroyed the nebula pillar and the solar pillar. And combining both types of fragments, I created the Polaris Punch. And this weapon was absolutely crazy. After reaching 99 combo counts, I was able to do this crazy attack. I unleashed an insane flurry of attacks. Now it's time for the final boss. And this was the only time I actually had trouble fighting one. Moonlord's hands kept on moving away from me, so it was really hard for me to catch up to it to attack it. This fight took an insanely long time, and I did have to use the nurse method, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to beat it. But I was not successful at first. I did die multiple times. I died so many times to the point where I had to find a new way to fight it. And so I went to the ocean and fought Fishron to get the mount. I was able to get another weapon called the Breakwater. This weapon allows me to teleport just like the Rod of Discord. When I do teleport, it does give me a debuff, which pretty much just slows my movement speed. I then summoned Moonlord and was finally able to beat it. I unleashed my special attack onto its core to finish it off. At the very end, I found out that once the flurry of attacks was over, after a couple of seconds, it would do another attack that would deal 20,000 damage. Alright, and we're done. So my final thoughts on this mod, it's definitely a lot of fun, but every boss up until Moonlord was just way too easy. I could just dive right into bosses and just keep on attacking without worrying about my HP, because I would just heal it all back anyways. But don't let this discourage you from playing this mod. There are many things still left out there that I have not explored yet. So yeah, go play this mod pack, check everything out, you won't regret it. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.